Okay, let's get back into it. Last time we saw someone who's 45 is literally me. If you remember, you're here. It's this like pink bunny girl furniture who's literally me. I swear. Oh, 30 minutes had already passed since Rudolph's group had left the guest. Oh yeah, and Rudolph and Kitty. Did they die? I don't remember. No, they haven't died yet. By any measure, their return was too late, and Kraus and Natsuhi, who waited by the entrance, were reaching their limits of their patience. The chain was set on the door. That was the precaution in the event that Rudolph's group was attacked and the master key stolen from them. For that reason, they needed to wait by the entrance like this for the others to return.
さすがに遅すぎます。彼らの身に何かあったのでは。
Kraus glanced between his watch and the door, struggling to keep his composure.
もし彼らが戻らないようなことがあるならば。
Oh, sorry, I had to do something really quickly. Sorry about that.
その覚悟を始めた方が良さそうだ。やはり不用心だったんだ。
私はそうだと申し上げました。なぜ彼らはこれほどの危険を承知で外に。愚かなことです。ローザさんが襲われたばかりだというのに、なぜに外へ。
それを言って
も
も
live
始
on
ま
the
らん。
edge, I guess.
とにかくこれでゲストハウスに大人は3人。私と夏希、そして高熱で寝込んでいるエヴァだけだ。
At that time, the forceful sound of a door being opened came from the hallway, and they heard Ava's panicked voice. The voice kept calling out Hideyoshi's name. It seemed as though she'd had a bad dream or something due to her fever and was calling for her husband. She knows he's dead.
どうしましたか？大丈夫ですか？うちの人はどこ？うちの人がいないの。
Aww.
ずっと一緒にいるって約束してくれたのに。ずっと手を握ってくれてるって約束したのに。
Kraus was struck dumb by this attitude of hers, which she had never shown in front of him before, but Natsuhi understood her feelings.
落ち着いて。秀吉さんはルドルフさんたちと一緒に今表へ出ています。表へ？どうしてよ。私とずっと一緒にいてくれるって約束したのに、どうして表になんか行ってるの？
'Cause he's a pig.
表へ出てはダメ。表には魔女がいるわ。行ってはダメ。殺されてしまう。
エヴァ、落ち着きなさい。秀吉さんはルドルフたちと一緒に屋敷へ戻っているのだ。
どうして屋敷に行かなくちゃいけないのよ。ここなら安全なのに、どうして表になんか出したのよ。どうして屋敷なんかに戻ったのよ。
明日までの食料を取りに行くことになったのだ。秀吉さんはお前の体調が悪いことを気にしてて、そのためにもと言って。
いつ戻ってくるの？いつ戻ってくるのよ。表はダメよ。バラ庭園はダメ。屋敷はダメ。魔女がいる。黄金の魔女が歩き回ってる。見つかったら殺されてしまう。絶対に殺されてしまう。ああ、うちの人はいつ戻ってくるの。30分前にここを出ました。私たちは帰りを待っています。30分？そんなのおかしいじゃない。屋敷に行って食料を取って帰ってくるのに、どうしてそんなに時間がかかるのよ。それであんたたちはなんでここでぼんやりしてるのよ。迎えに行かなきゃ。早くあの人のところへ行かなきゃ。
Ava probably had quite a nightmare, and because it had continued even after she woke up, she could no longer hide her panic. Natsuhi tried calming her down, but all it did was make Ava's emotions explode more. Maybe they heard that disturbance. Battler and the kids, who had supposedly been on the second floor, were peeking their faces through the crack of the lobby door. Kraus, Natsuhi, Ava, and Battler, George, Jessica, Nanjo. Everyone in the guest house had gathered by the entrance and understood the current situation.
母さんの意見に同感だよ。父さんたちの様子を確かめに行くべきだ。
ああ、そうだな。荷物が大きくなって手間取ってる可能性だってあるぜ。人手は歓迎のはずさ。
ローザさんが襲われてすぐですぞ。二次遭難の可能性もあります。ここは一つ慎重に。
バカを言わないで。慎重に何よ。助けを求めてるかもしれない主人を見殺しにしろというの。私が様子を見に行くわ。臆病者はここで待っていなさい。
Oh, she wants her baby. Looking agitated, Ava raised her gun. Judging by her face, it would be useless for anyone to try and stop her. She loves him so much. George, who realized this first, raised his head.
僕も行こう。バトラ君も来るだろう。人数が多い方がいい。
おう。エヴァおばさん、来るなって言ったってついてくぜ。
私も行くよ。私だけ安全なところに隠れてなんかいられないぜ。ジェシカは出てはなりません。ここに私といるのです。良いですね。
It was like they were implying that those three had already been killed anyway, so going outside would be pointless. Natsu realized that Ava felt like her heart had been gouged out, but she spoke out strongly as Jessica's mother.
そうね。それがいいでしょうね。兄さんたち一家はゲストハウスで留守番してて。これはうちの家族とバトラ君の家族の問題よ。あと南條先生も来てもらえるかしら。万が一のこともあるかもしれないから。
バトラ、エヴァ、ジョージ、南條の4人はルドルフ、キリエ、秀吉の3人の遺体を発見。
第4から第6の番ってことか。なら死体には額、胸、腹にそれぞれ例の悪魔の杭が。
はい。ルドルフの額に1本、秀吉の胸に1本、そしてキリエの腹部に1本。悪魔の3人には争ったか、あるいは逃げ回るかしたと思われる着衣の乱れがあります。3人の遺体は寄り添ってはおらず、犯人と遭遇後、ある程度の抵抗を試みたと推定されます。
杭で額と胸と腹をとか、相変わらず無芸。
Even though Ronove knew it would be superfluous. Superfluous! Anyways, he contemplated telling Battler the truth. Normally the witch would have killed them in a much, much, much more horrible way. The corpses had been left in this manner only because Beato had suggested to the witch that she showed restraint. The new witch, thinking it would fit well enough as long as she gouged them with stakes, would probably just have stuck a stake into a lump of meat that wasn't even shaped like a human. Rosa and Maria's corpses were a particularly striking example. They'd been killed like the Golden Witch had wished. Just how gruesome would the corpses have been? Beato changed into the still better kind of killing Battler had mentioned earlier. Wanting to have Beato's small bit of thoughtfulness appreciated, he thought of telling Battler about this. But judging by Battler's eyes, that might do more harm than good. To humans, the gap between being alive and being dead is very large. Saying that she'd given them better deaths might have made it possible for a demon to understand her feelings and pardon her. But there was no way a human would be so accepting. Understanding this, Ronove remains silent despite knowing of Beato's modest efforts.
いつも通り、死体の死亡確認からさせてもらうぜ。ロノウェ、赤で宣言を頼む。おい、聞こえないのか？赤で宣言を頼む。副将要求だ。ルドルフ、キリエ、秀吉の3名は死亡している。
申し訳ございます。副将を拒否させていただきます。
なんだと？いきなりどういうつもりだ？
By now, proclaiming that the victims were dead in red was almost a given in this battle. Refusing to do that was almost by losing by default. So when Ronove refused as his part of his first move, Battler was dumbfounded.
申し訳ございません。私めのお嬢様の代行者である資格をこれをもって返上させていただきます。よって私にはそれを赤で復唱することができません。それを復唱する資格があるのはお嬢様ただ一人だけで。
正しい言い分です。ロノウェはベアト側の代行者でしかあります。ロノウェが代行の役を負り、かつバトラ君がベアトを相手として認めないならば、新しい代行者を立てる必要があります。
新しき代行者はおりません。どうかバトラ様、お嬢様を再び対局の相手とお認めください。
そいつは聞けねえ相談だぜ。あの不愉快な残酷野郎。俺は絶対に対局者だなどと認めない。それを認めないために、俺はこのゲームを降りないんだ。
不愉快な点につきましては、お嬢様に代わりまして謝罪します。また、お嬢様には二度と不愉快な言動を取らぬよう制約させます。
どうだかな。
バトラ君、あの子の師匠として私も謝罪します。よく言って聞かせますので、どうか一度だけ許してやってはくれませんか？
おいおい、よしてくれよ。まるで俺が悪者みてえだぜ。それに、あんたらにいくら謝罪の言葉を聞かされても、俺の、そいつを、ベアトが自分の口で言えるってんなら、まあ、耳を貸さねえこともないぜ。
わかりました。それがあの子を再び認めてもらう唯一の条件ならば、あの子に謝罪をさせましょう。ロノウェ、あの子を呼びなさい。よろしいですね、バトラ君。
好きにしろよ。だが、俺が許すと期待するな。呼べよ。あのムカつく魔女。
ありがとうございます、バトラ様。ただいま、お呼びいたします。お嬢様、バトラ様がお呼びでございます。
After a few heartbeats, gold butterflies gathered together in midair and created Beato's form. It was much more docile appearance than the one she'd made before.
呼んだかロノウェ。
話は聞いていたはずですよ。あなたの口から何か言うことはありますか？
It looked as though Beato shrunk slightly under Battler's cold gaze. Several times, Beato made an effort to get the words out of her mouth, but that didn't work so well, and she was just as awkward as someone trying to light a match during a freezing winter with icy hands. Even as she did that, the game board was advancing. In the hall, they had just found the corpses of the new victims and had broken down crying.
Oyaji! キリエさん、うわー、うわ
母さん、しっかりして。僕だって悔しい、悲しい。
おそらく、お嬢様は、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言う通り、お嬢様の言
即死だったでしょう。
They died over and
た
over,
とえ
buddy.
彼らが倒れた直後に我々がここに訪れたとしても、きっと手遅れだったに違
いいえ、違うわ。きっと生きてたわよ。胸にこんなものを刺されて、うちの人はもがき苦しみながら死んでいったに違いないのよ。もっと早く来ていればきっと助かった、きっと助かったのよ。
バトラ君も辛いだろうけど、しっかり。
大丈夫だよ。大丈夫だぜ。兄貴、もうちょっとだけ泣かせてくれ。俺が一番マシなんだ。俺が一番悲しくないはずなんだ。だから、もうちょっとだけ泣いたら大丈夫だから。
そんなことないよ。両親を失った心の痛みはよくわかる。僕には母さんがまだいる。バトラ君よりはるかにマシだ。
いや、違うぜ。ジョージの兄貴が一番辛いはずなんだ。分かってんだよ。兄貴、ジョージの兄貴が俺たちの中で一番悲しくて辛いんだ。俺はそれを分かってる。だからこれ以上メソメソなんて泣いちゃいけねえんだ。
どうして僕の方が辛いなんて。
Cause you're a pussy. Just
俺
kidding.
にとっ
Well,
ちゃ
I don't like George.
親父もキリエさんも成人して独り立ちしたらいつかは別れる人間さ。親である以上子供より先に死ぬのは宿命だ。それが少し早くなっちまっただけの話だ。だが兄貴は違うぜ。いつか別れる親だけじゃない。これからの人生をずっと一緒に生きていくはず。シャノンちゃんまで失ったんじゃないかよ。人の命に重さなんかねえさ。赤ん坊の命だって、年寄りの命だって。だがよ、それからの人生が長ければ長いほど、一緒に築いてく未来が長ければ長いほど、その死ってのは悲しいものなんじゃねえのかよ。兄貴は、シャノンちゃんと婚約したんだろ。これからの人生と家庭を一緒に築いていこうって約束したんだろ。その未来のデカさが、幸せのデカさがよ、俺の痛みなんかとは比べ物にならねえ。
Well, that's not true. Everyone's pain is valid, but I understand what he's saying.
だから兄貴はもっともっと泣いても許されるはずなんだ。なのに俺たちいとこの兄貴格だからって無理に冷静を装って。やめてよ、バトラ君。
George was trying to make a calm smile, but already he couldn't stop a single hot tear from leaving a streak down his face.
悲しくないわけがないじゃないか。僕はシャノンと一緒にたくさんの未来を思い描き、きっと100年の人生では叶えきれないくらいの夢を語り合ったさ。その夢の一番最初の籍を入れることさえ叶えられなくて悲しくないわけがないじゃないか。
それに比べたら俺なんかだから俺にはこれ以上泣く資格なんかねえんだ。兄貴だってこらえてるのに、俺にこれ以上の涙を流す資格なんて。
同じだよ。親しい人を失えば悲しいのは僕もバトラ君も同じだよ。だからバトラ君が僕より涙を流してはいけないなんてルールはない。
True.
そして僕だってもうこれ以上涙をこらえなければならないなんてルールも ないんだもんね。
兄貴。兄貴。
未来を語り合ったシャノンが死んだ。父さんも死んだ。悲しいな。
As Battler and George hugged each other tightly, they cried a waterfall of tears over each other's shoulders for the people who had been so precious to them.
どうして俺がジョージの兄貴が一番辛いって言ったか。
聞いていたからわかる。その後の人生を共にする時間の長さに悲しみは比例するとな。
もちろんそれだけじゃ測れねえけどな。俺たち人間は
This is a
お
cool
前ら魔
song.
女とは違う。生きてから死ぬまでという有限の時間をその力の限り生きている。それをないがしろにする奴は許せない。ましてや嘲笑いもてあそぶような奴はお前のような死の概念もめちゃくちゃな奴には理解もできねえだろうがよ。これから生きる時間の長さだけじゃない、一生懸命に生きている奴の人生を嘲笑うこと、これが一番俺には言う。ジョージの兄貴はがむしゃらに頑張って人生を生きてた。シャノンちゃんと結婚するために悲壮な覚悟をしてこの日に臨んでいたはずなんだ。俺みたいに久しぶりにいとこと会えるなんて浮かれてたやつとはわけが違う。
しかしだな。
ベアト、今は黙って聞きなさい。
お前の言い分にも一定の理解はする。お前には自分の復活のためにおかしな碑文に沿った殺人を続ける必要があるってんだろ。だからその範囲内でのお前の殺人、お前の立場の事情を汲み取る限りギリギリの理解はできる。それがお前にとっては必要な行為だからだ。ならそれ以上の不要な行為は全てお前の無意味な残酷趣味ということになる。つまり第一の晩に6人を殺すことまでがお前にとっての必要な行為ならば、顔を砕くとか腹を裂いてお菓子を詰め込むなんて真似は全て全く不必要なお前の残酷趣味だってことになる。俺はお前のこの点について断じて許すことができないんだ。お前はローザおばさんがひどい殺され方を繰り返された時、結局は最後には生き返らせるのだからみたいなことを言ったそうだな。バルギリアに聞いてるぜ。
それはまあ
最後には生き返るなら何度殺してもいいという考えは命をもてあそぶだけの全く不必要な行為ではないのか。殺すなら人思いに殺せ。もてあそぶな。殺さないなら痛むな。お前は人の命を自在に操れるのをいいことに命の尊厳を忘れてしまった。だから俺は認められないんだ。命の重みを、そして失った時の悲しみを知らない奴を俺は対戦相手だと断じて認め。
無限の魔法が邪法と言われるゆえんです。無限の魔女に有限の概念はない。壊す、殺すという有限と終焉の概念がないのです。それゆえに無限の魔女は時に生と死の狭間をゴム跳びで遊ぶかのようにその行き来を遊び出すようになります。それはとてもとても恐ろしいことです。だから私は無限の魔女として自ら望み、あなたの域まで達しなかったのです。
It was something Virgilia had been trying to tell Beato for a long time, But Beato had been too young and too obediently listen to those words. She had been too wild. She had been possessed by She had been possessed by that detestable pleasure.
壺を割ってはならぬと言われても、だからこそいつか割って、そして無限の魔法を得ていくら壊しても好きなだけ元に直せると知ったわらわは、壺を壊すことがこれほど。
それを禁忌の蜜と呼びます。人はその中身に惹かれるのではない、それを封ずる錠前に惹かれるのです。実に嘆かわしいことです。
ワルギリアに聞きたい。無限の魔法なんてものがどうしてあるんだ。それは何のためにこの世にあるんだ。
無限の魔法に限らず、魔法はすべて人の世に幸福をもたらすために存在するのです。今さらバトラ君には信じがたいでしょうが、私たち魔女は人の世に恵みを与えるために、人と人ならざる者たちとの架け橋になるべく修行を重ねているのです。
死者を繰り返し蘇らせ、何度もいじめ殺すことでどう
大切な形見の壺が割れてしまった時、それを直すことで誰もが笑顔を取り戻すならば、しかしそれは壊すために直すのではありません。人に幸福を与えるために蘇らせるのです。
だとしたらベアト、お前は無限の魔女。今俺は漠然と思ったことがある。どうして俺がお前とこんなおかしなゲームを延々と続けてるのかだ。これは俺を屈服させるためのゲームじゃない。お前が本当の意味で無限の魔女に認められるための試験ではないのか。
知らぬわ。わらわがそなたにゲームを申し込んでいるのは誰の思惑でもないわ。
俺は今バルギリアからの魔女の定義を聞いた。それによるならばベアト、お前は魔女ですらない。その修行の途中で自らの力を誤解した見習いってことになる。これは魔女と人間の戦いのはず。ならば魔女でないお前に俺の相手としての資格はない。わかるな。
わらわがまだ見習い風情だと申すか。ならばわらわはいつそなたの対戦相手だと、再びいつこのゲームを再開できるというのか。
Poor Beato.
さあな。
Sorry, I'm trying to put my hair
それは
up
少
right
なくと
now.
も今じゃない。お前が俺の言った話をちゃんと理解できて本当の魔女になった時、俺はお前を再びゲームの対戦相手だと認めるだろうよ。
そのような抽象的な言い方ではわからぬ。どうすればお前の許しを超えるのか、はっきりと聞かせよ。
いいや、これで十分だ。あとはお前が考えろ。俺が言いたいのは以上だ。理解ができないならワルギリアやロノウェに相談してみろ。お前みたいなガキンチョはまず大人の言葉に耳を傾けるところから始めやがれ。ワルギリア、ゲームは一度中断する。ロノウェが代行を降りた以上、あとはベアトが対局者としてふさわしい資格を持つのを待つしかない。
了解しました。ベアトがその資格を得たと認められるまでゲームを対局者不在のまま進行させます。ベアトもそれでよろしいですね。
異論はない。わらわは時間とゆっくり考えられる場所が欲しい。これにて席を外してもよいか。
ああ、 いいぜ。
それではまたな。
待てよ。そうしょぼくれた顔すんな。
それはすまぬな。わらわは胸の内が全て顔に出る勝負。偽れぬ。
ならまだ構成の余地はあるってことだぜ。一つだけ約束する。俺はお前とのゲームに勝つかもしれないし負けるかもしれない。お前が戻ってこなけりゃ不戦勝ってこともあるだろうよ。
At that point, Battler stopped talking for a second, then he spoke forcefully.
しかし絶対に俺からは降りない。お前を不戦勝にだけは。お前が再び俺の好敵手としてそこに座るのを俺はずっとここで待っているぞ。
バトラ様。
ありがとうなバトラ。わらわはきっとそなたに認められて戻ってくるぞ。
After showing a hopeful smile for a very short while, Beato vanished. After seeing her expression as she left, Battler was absolutely convinced that her face could tell no lies. The 7 survivors returned to the guest house once again. By now it was clear that those who went outside would not return alive. Rudolph's group had gone out with 2 guns and a master key, but those had been lost. It was already clear that those had been stolen by the culprit. Because the shutters were closed on the windows, they couldn't be opened even if the culprit had a master key. The front and back doors that led to the outside were all sealed by chains, and they were further blocked with sofas and tables. Even if the culprit decided to break in through violent means, it wouldn't be easy for them.
台風が今となってはむしろ幸いかもしれんな。もしも晴れていたならゲストハウスに放火するという手もあり得たかもしれん。
そもそも台風でなかったなら午前中に船が来てたわ。それを不幸中の幸いと言えるかは微妙ね。
エヴァさん、体の具合はいかがですか？無理をされないようにしてください。
ありがとう。熱はまだ感じるけど、そんなことを言ってる場合じゃないの。子供のためにも今は寝込んでる場合じゃない。
After crying so much in front of Hideyoshi's corpse, Eva had felt a strong self-awareness of her position as a mother, and her expression conveyed a strong will. In actual fact, her fever still hadn't gone down, and she was aware that, if she didn't keep a strong hold on herself, she felt as though the fever would make her mind hazy again. By this point, the first floor formed a final line of defense set up by Kraus, Natsuhi, and Eva. The children and the guest Nanjo, who had been strongly warned not to go out downstairs without taking great care. If the culprit used a ladder or something, it probably wouldn't be impossible for them to attack the second floor, but it wouldn't be easy for them to break those sturdy shutters from such an insecure position. The second floor was relatively safe compared to the first. Battler and George also wanted to remain on the first floor so that they could fight if the worst happened, but Ava had put a stop to that. In her mind, George was now the only member of her family, but it seemed she didn't even want to expose him to the danger of coming downstairs to the first floor. Kraus and Natsuhi could understand that feeling. Also, a great deal of time had passed since the siege began. In the second floor cousin's room, Battler, George, and Jessica sat dazed, and didn't even listen to the TV that had been left on. For a while, Nanjo had been with them and had tried to lend them words of encouragement. When he realized he might actually be having the opposite effect, he hid himself in his own room on the same second floor. George kept looking dazedly at the photographs inserted in his notebook. It was from the time he'd taken a vacation in Okinawa with Shannon. Shannon's happy smile was contained in those photos. George could remember the temperature and the humidity, the warmth and the strength of the wind, and even what he had been talking about with her at the time those photos had been taken, as clearly as though it had been yesterday. So to George, they weren't simply photos, but a door to bring back warm memories. In this room, even though the sound of the typhoon and the TV should have entered George's hearing, it was the scenery of Okinawa he had seen with her and her laughing voice that reached his eyes and ears. George had strived to be reborn after meeting Shannon. He had sworn to separate himself from the timid person he had once been, easily caught up in the atmosphere, unable to refuse a request, and easily used by those around him. He had resolved himself to become a strong man who could make her life more joyous. Therefore, if he hadn't met Shannon, the man called Ushiromiya George would probably have lived a very different life. And George of that different life surely wouldn't have been as excellent a man as he is now. The person I am now exists for Shannon's sake. Now that Shannon is gone, why do I exist? It's completely meaningless, isn't it? He felt a deep, deep sadness, as though he himself had become empty. The feeling must have been tormenting him this whole time. However, until Battler mentioned it, he hadn't been aware of this feeling himself. He finally managed to remember that it should have been alright for him to cry much more. So he cried, just like Battler had. He cried himself dry. By now his eyes were bright red and swollen, and he couldn't cry anymore. So George did his best to change his way of thinking. He was not meaningless now, and he should be grateful to Shannon for giving him such a character. Sorry. The dead don't come back to life. He would have to get over being separated from his most beloved person. If he were to chase after Shannon and kill himself, she would surely be deeply dejected. It worked the other way around too. If he had died and Shannon had chased after him, throwing away her own life, he wouldn't have been able to forgive himself. So he chose to surpass his sadness and anger, and decided to thank her instead. After meeting Shannon, she made his days rich and full, and taught him the meaning of working hard for other people's sakes. As a result, she had shaped him into the kind of person he had wanted to be. He wanted to thank her for that. He tried to quell his sadness in this way, but each time he did, he remembered Shannon's smile. He understood it logically. He knew that grieving any more than this would only make her grieve in heaven, but that didn't bring a stop to his sadness. Very Caillou. I don't like George though.
なんで人が死ぬってのはよ、こんなに悲しいんだろうな。
Battler muttered. It was as though he was speaking on behalf of all humans. His question probably hadn't been directed at anyone, but Jessica answered.
別れはどんな形でもいつも悲しいさ。でもそれが例えば老いであるとかあらかじめ約束されていて、その悲しみを長い時間をかけてあらかじめ薄めておくことができる。それを許されないから突然の不幸は悲しいんだろうよ。
なるほどな。そりゃ病気にでもかかって 何年も昏睡状態になってりゃ、少しずつ心の整理もついてくだろうけど、ある日突然じゃ、その暇もねえもんな。
本来なら数年をかけて薄めるべき悲しみが一度に押し寄せる。そりゃ辛いわけさ。時には人の生涯に傷を残すほど深い悲しみを与えることもあるかもしれない。
生涯に傷を残すほどか。
His mom dying, probably, right?
じいさまのオカルト趣味もさ、そう囁かれてたんだよな。例のベアトリーチェって愛人を大昔に亡くして、それが悲しくて悲しくて立ち直れなくて、それで死者を蘇らせるためのオカルトの研究にそう囁かれてた。
だとしたら、じいさまは最後の土壇場で、犯人は蘇ったベアトリーチェで、じいさまは殺される瞬間に再会できたってことになるぜ。自分で蘇らせて、それに殺されるとは皮肉な話さ。
それでもおじいさまは会えたんだろうね。人生の半分を落としてもう一度会いたいと願った女性に、わずかなひとときとはいえ再会できたんだろうね。
丸焼きにされちまったけどな。人生の半分をかけた研究にしてはちょいと割の合わない成果だろうぜ。
そんなことはないよ。たとえほんのひとときであったとしても、愛した女性に再会できたおじいさまは幸せだったはずさ。
Yeah, he's a creep for loving her, though.
仮に
He doesn't take
生
no
命
for
の
an
摂理に
answer.
逆らった
Just
罪を
pesters her her whole life.
神に咎められて、その身を焼かれ地獄に落とされたとしても、その見返りの再会が
Hell yeah, he's sent to
ほ
hell.
んのわずかな時間だったとし、
上司兄さん、
神の怒りに触れて、このわずかな時間でもいいからシャノンを再び蘇らせてくれるなら、僕は残りの人生すべてを5分でいいからシャノンともう一度言葉を交わしたい。1分でもいいから、それと引き換えに全ての人生を捧げても僕は構わない。
兄貴。
When Battler and Jessica realized that their pointless discussion was causing George pain, they could do nothing more than shut their mouths. George directed his thoughts to Kinzo's life. He sacrificed half his life to research that no one understood. And on the last day of his life, he revived the person he loved the most, and probably succeeded in his reunion in his final moments. George didn't know how much time they'd had together. He didn't know if they'd been given an hour or just 5 minutes. However, that moment must have been enough to reward him for all those months of research. Even though he spent dozens of years to achieve it, that small amount of time was probably more than worth it to him. Until today, I never believed in the occult or magic or anything. Somewhere in my heart, I even made fun of grandfather's research, thinking of it as nothing more than a pastime. However, I won't make fun of it anymore. No, to the contrary, I strongly believe that it's real. If the power of belief can create miracles, I'll probably throw away all of my studies up till today, spending the rest of my life from today onwards studying magic. Give me the power of magic. And give me a miracle that'll let me see Shannon again.
ごめんよみんな。僕もどうかしてる。魔法で死者が蘇るくらいだったら、世界中の人々が魔法を学ぶだろうね。でも現実にはそんなことはない。誰も学ばない。死者が魔法では蘇らないって知って。ごめんよ、妙なことを言い出して。僕のせいでおかしな空気になっちゃったね。みんなだって辛いだろうに。 気を使わせてごめん。
Even if I did it to divert myself from my sadness, maybe I did say something strange. If I keep talking about stuff that's so weird, I'm sure I won't do anything for their sadness. But that doesn't mean I can't bear the silence. Is it Beato?
僕は下に行ってもう一杯コーヒーをもらってくる。うちの母さん、コーヒーの入れ方にはこだわりがあるんだよ。みんなもおかわりはいるかい？
Battler and Jessica lightly shook their heads. Without pressing them any further, I took my mug and left the room. Oh, I'm George now? Boo. The shutters were all closed in the hallway, so the corridor was very dim. I tried visiting Dr. Nanjo's room and asking if he wanted more coffee, but he said he didn't need any either. It seemed my mother's orthodox method of making coffee isn't universally appreciated. One time, I made some for Shannon, but she told me that while it was delicious, it was a little strong.
シャノン。
That's no good. Even though I left the room to change my mood, that image of Shannon's face filling my head hasn't faded in the slightest. I keep seeing those fun days with her more and more vividly. And it's saddening that I never even got a chance to see her dead face. Jeez. According to her parents, she was apparently killed with something like a gun or a spear. I'm sure they were just trying to console me, but they had said her dead face had been very beautiful and peaceful. I wonder if she had the engagement ring I gave her last night on her finger. If she accepted my engagement, she should have had it on her left hand. Last night we were both on the edge of losing it and not calm at all. Shannon accepted my engagement pretty courageously, but she might have regretted that rash action once she cooled her head. She might have taken the ring off. I wonder if she has the ring on now. I want to be sure of that much at least. I want to know how she felt at the very end. But even if I do confirm that, it doesn't mean she'll come back. I wonder what will happen to her body. After the autopsy, it will probably be immediately cremated. Then I'll never be able to see her face, even her dead face, for all eternity.
僕はシャノンを失ったショックで少しおかしくなってるのかな。
You've always been crazy, George. I don't want her body to be burned. If she's burned and turned to ash, she'll get turned into sake. Just kidding. Never again will it be possible for her to revive. They say cremation is frowned upon in Western tradition. Because of the day of the resurrection, there'd be no body to revive. Because of that, it seems that great criminals in Western history were often cremated after the execution as punishment, and their ashes were sometimes scattered in rivers and such. In other words, to Western people, death is nothing more than a sleep until the resurrection. It's essential that the corpse is left after death.
つまりそれは西洋人は死者が蘇る奇跡の存在を知っていたからなんだ。でも日本にはその奇跡がなかったから焼いてしまうんだ。
Now I understand. I understand my grandfather idolized the Western occult. That was his only reason from the very beginning. Just to revive the person dear to him, grandfather spent the rest of his remaining life researching the Western occult. The situation surrounding us is now abnormal. Grandfather did revive his beloved Beatrice. And that Beatrice has carried out a terrible serial murder, with linked closed rooms that force us to conclude that magic was used. The Golden Witch Beatrice. The incarnation of the miracle of the Western occult, and also the culprit who killed Shannon. She's an entity I should hate, and yet for some reason I want to cling to her. I wonder if Shannon could be revived with the magic of miracles, which grandfather bet his life on. According to the legend of the Ushinomiya family, grandfather met with her long ago and was given gold. Then, if I also met with her, instead of gold, would she give me Shannon's life? As collateral, I don't care what sort of devil's contract she imposed. I wouldn't mind sacrificing all of my remaining life. George probably couldn't believe or realize that his voiceless wish was heard by the witch herself, who stood right behind him. Beatrice had been listening to the entire discussion between the children just now in the cousin's room. Battler told her she didn't know the value of a human's life, and wanting to understand that in her own way, she had stealthily visited, listening in on their discussion.
それが願いだというのか。それを叶えればわらわは魔女だと認められるのか。
Beato looked at the palms of both of her hands. She had handed over most of her once surging magical power when the new witch succeeded the name of the Endless Witch. Of course, her current power still made her worthy of being called a witch, but it could not compare to her previous strength.
無限の魔法などなくとも、わらわは千年に名を轟かす大魔女であるぞ。死者を蘇らすなど、造作もないことよ。
Inside her head, she thought about several magical steps she could take to revive the dead. Even magic that should have been easy in the past would be difficult with her current power. She thought of something, then clicked her tongue, then did so over again, over and over. In the end, she finally thought of a single spell. But that was the spell she couldn't use by herself. It was a spell that witches with weak power use, one that relied on the aid of others. In the past, Beato had looked down on that type of magic. Therefore, she frantically tried to search for any conceivable alternative. But in the end, she couldn't think of one and slumped over in self-derision. Then, careful to not surprise him, she softly called out softly to George's heart.
後ろ宮ジョージ、わらわの声が聞こえるか。
聞こえるとも。あなたは誰だい？本当に魔女のベアトリーチェ、それとも僕の悲しみが生んだ幻想なのか？もしも前者だったなら、僕の願いを聞いてほしい。そして後者なら、僕をそっとしておいてほしい。
Their conversation in a mental world was a lot like having one in a dream. When you dream, haven't you ever had the experience of casually accepting something that would have been absurd in the real world? Their conversation in this world was like that. So even though a witch appeared and started talking to George, he was not surprised.
わらわが黄金の魔女ベアトリーチェである。本来わらわとそなたはこうして会話を交わすことなどできぬ。しかしそなたがわらわのことを強く意識し
こうして互いのチャンネルを合わせることができる。
シャノンを殺したのはあなたなのか、あなたを名乗る何者かの仕業なのか、ただあなたが本当の魔女として存在しているならば、どんな対価にも応じる。僕の命を望むなら今すぐに捧げてもいい。どうかシャノンを生き返らせてほしい。それが無理ならせめてわずかの間話をさせてくれるお願いだ。
対価はいらない。その願い叶えて
本当にシャノンを。
うん。だが反言の魔法を扱うには今のわらわには魔力が足りない。だからそなたの手を借りねばならない。
僕にできることならどんなことでも。それが僕の心臓を今すぐこの場で取り出すことであったとしても、僕は躊躇しない。
そんなものいらぬというのに、わらわは魔法を唱える。さすれば冥府の扉に隙間ができよう。だが今のわらわにはその隙間よりシャノンの魂を連れ出せるほどの力はない。しかしシャノンのことを強く思うそなたなら、その思いを魔力に変えて彼女の魂を必ずや連れ戻せるだろう。どうだ、わらわを手伝うか。
手伝うとも。シャノンの命が蘇るなら僕は何を失うことも恐れない。
George's fist shook in silence. Then he slowly came to his senses. He had been absent-mindedly standing near the window in the hall that whole time, his mug still in his hand. And... sorry. The witch from his dream was still there.
そんな夢じゃない。
静かにせよ。今のわらわはとても脆い。この上さらに他の人間まで現れたら、そなたの願いは叶えるから良いか。
George covered his mouth with both hands, nodding enthusiastically several times. In that instant, he almost drugged the mug he was... In that instant, he almost dropped the mug he was holding. George frantically juggled it around and caught it. He was afraid that if it fell to the floor and made a loud sound, the witch's form might disappear like a bubble popping. He softly set the mug on the floor and stared at the witch in front of him again. Her form didn't disappear. It wasn't a dream.
さあ、シャノンが眠る客室へ行くぞ。そなたの思いの力にて彼女の魂を連れ戻すのだ。
行くってどうやって？下には母さんたちがいる。表へ出るのを許してくれるわけがない。それにあなたはさっき他の人間が現れたら姿を保てないと言わなかったかい？
そういえばそうだ。下にはクラウスたちがおったか。それでは確かに下へ降りられぬな。ならば一階へ降りずに屋敷へ行けばいいではないか。簡単な話よ。
Beata laughed as though she had thought of a pleasant prank, and with her golden pipe she lightly tapped a window with its shutter closed. When she did, 3 gold butterflies appeared from the pipe and opened the lock on the window as though melting it. Then the window opened without a sound. The shutter beyond it was exactly the same. The clasp unset itself, also without making a sound, and quietly opened. The window opened, exposing the wind and rain outside the mansion. Perhaps because of the direction or something related to the construction of the building, The wind did not blow inside. Because of that, for a while, George felt as though this entrance that opened to the outside was a dream or an illusion, and he couldn't accept it as real.
さあ行くぞ。ついてまいる。
Beato gently floated upwards. It was a natural action, like that of a diver enjoying an underwater scroll? I don't know. It made it easy to believe that if you acted like she did, you too might be able to float in the sky just as though you were swimming through the water. No, George did believe that, so without thinking, just as she had done, he also, gently, as though swimming in the water, lifted his feet.
ほう、やるではないか。わらわが説明するよりも早く空を舞うことを覚えたか。
George was shocked to find himself floating in midair like he was swimming. Of course, Beato was also shocked that George, who shouldn't have been able to use magic, had figured out how to do it just by instinct.
空が飛べるなんて、泳げるなんて。
理屈を考えてはならぬ。それが自然なことであると受け入れよ。ニュートンとかアインシュタインとか人間たちの競技を思い出してはならぬぞ。特に高き空を飛んでいる時は墜落する未熟な魔女も時に
あるがままを、あるがままを受け入れる。
George repeated those words over and over. He must not deny magic no matter what. Denying that would be like throwing away what might be his first and last chance to revive Shannon. However, compared to Beato, who was elegantly drifting like smoke, George's movements clearly resembled someone underwater. Therefore, if he didn't act like he was kicking his feet in water every once in a while, he'd be caught by the force of gravity bit by bit.
わらわが初めて空を舞った時よりは上出来であると褒めてやる。行くぞ。ついてまいる。
When Beato beckoned George, she flew into the stormy sky. It was just like a scene from a fairy tale. The scene unfolding before George's eyes felt entirely like an extension of his dream.
空を飛べるのはすごいけど、すごい風と雨だ。
なんだ、雨と風に苛まれるのか。それを防ぐ魔法を教えてもよいが、今のそなたには早いし、今はそれを習う時間を割くのも惜しかろう。
ええ、僕が必要としている魔法はそれじゃない。
George wore a strong-willed gaze, refusing to let the wind and rain get to him.
見えてきたぞ。よし、もう少し頑張れよ。今落ちればバラの茂みだぞ。
The undulating rose garden was spread beneath the witch and George's gaze. The illusion-like scene no longer surprised George. Only the gradually approaching mansion was reflected in his eyes.
シャロン、待ってて。
待ってて。
必ず君を蘇らせてみせる。
Oh, that was a lot. Oh. At that time, the cruel new witch could be seen staring at the guest house from a different location.
あと残すは第7第8の番だけね。あと2人で先代のババアの義理はおしまいだわ。クラウスと夏日を殺す。夫婦仲良くね。
There I am!
標的はどうかに？ゲストハウス1階ロビーにて標的2名と後ろ宮エヴァを捕捉。反魔法力測定。410へデータリンク。410データ受領。反魔法力は極めて小。エヴァさえ席を外せばまな板の上のマグロにアワビです。にひひひひ。いかがしますか、大ベアトリーチェ卿。 ご命令をいただければすぐにも狙撃いたします。どうかご命令を。ほんとにあんたたちは便利な家具ね。死体をほじるしか能のない中古家具どもとは大違いだわねえ。シエスタ姉妹、またあなたたちの手際を見せてちょうだい。攻撃準備よ。死体はまた運び出してね。たっぷり遊んであげるんだから。文句はなしよ、ロノウェイ。
はい、かしこまりました。
At that moment, the witch noticed something. It was as though some presence had disappeared. Was it her imagination?
今何か気配を感じなかった？誰か感じた人いる？申し訳ありません。私は何も気づきませんでした。お許しを。
She's so cute. She's me.
私たちゲストハウスを観測中でしたから周辺監視はオフにしてます。にひ。ルシファーちゃんは何か気配感じた？
For just an instant, Lucifer glanced at Ronove, asking whether she should answer honestly or not. Ronove gave a small nod in response.
いいえ、申し訳ございません。ベアトリーチェ様、私たちは何も。中古家具ゆえ、愚鈍なことをお許しください。
そう、大悪魔のあなたがそう言うならきっと私の気のせいなんでしょうね。
The witch persistently stared in the direction the presence had disappeared to. That was where the rose garden lay, and beyond that she could see the mansion's dark silhouette created by lightning. It took quite some time before she pushed her unsatisfied feelings aside, and once again faced the guest house. I think I'm gonna save here for Umineko and head into another game.